I'm Zyra, 25 when this fire ignites, a wildfire caged in the wind-lashed vale of Thorns Manor, where my father, Caelric, once carved stars for me before Mom died, and he let my stepmother, Serafix, chain him. By 32, I've clawed through betrayal that sears. Caelric gutted my trust fund for her son Torvin's schemes, forcing me to scrape by in Glintwire's shadows. Then came Caelric's 57th in a stone amphitheater. Serafix branded me the disappointment with a tag that stung, and Torvin lunged with a snarled, "You'll pay," before a hag tripped him. Her cackle and a merchant's roar turned the crowd against Serafix's crumbling reign. I torched it all with one last toast and walked free. It's my tale of breaking loose. There lies my kindling, my triumph, my throne. Want to hear how I raised them? Step into my blaze. I stand in the Vale of Thorns Manor, where wind screams through cracked stone and thorns gnaw the walls like a living snare coiling tighter each night. My boots scrape warped oak as I hover near the hearth, its ashes sour with damp, recalling how Caelric, 50, once perched me on his knee here, his storm tails a low growl that steadied me before Mom's death at my 15, carved him empty. I've no roof but this rotting shell, so I've stayed, chasing the echo of his grin despite the chill seeping in. Tonight, Serafix, 48, sweeps through the archway, her heels snapping like dry bones, Torvin, 22, and Luneth, 19, slinking after her with smirks that rake my nerves raw. She's Caelric's new wife, her rule a venomous tide since their vows a month ago. Her voice lashes out, ordering Torvin to the fire, and I watch her sling a garish tapestry over Mom's quilt, her sneer a blade twisting in my gut. Caelric shuffles in, his frame sagging, eyes darting from me to the floor as he flinches, lips twitching like he's bitten something bitter. I feel his silence choke the air where his warmth once flared. I sidle to the hearth, charred pine stinging my lungs, and spot a wooden star I painted red at 12, wedged under a log, ash-dusted but whole. He'd cradled it once, vowing to keep it close, his pride a fire I fed on. Now, Serafix snaps at Luneth for wine, her glance at me a cold splinter, and I see I've been a fool, haunting this husk for a man who's let her drown my past in her haste. My blood heats as Torvin kicks the star with a grunt, his boot grinding my memory into the ash, and I know I've been fading in their clamor, a flame they think they can smother with every step over what's mine. I've been blind, tethered to this decaying sprawl, believing Caelric's care could still spark when all I taste is the rot of their claim leaching through the cracks. My fists clench, nails gouging my palms, and I breathe the manor's dank musk, feeling a fury kindle, not just loss, but a reckoning I've let simmer too long. This isn't about a quilt or a trinket. It's me, rising from their shadow, a blaze they can't douse. I lock eyes with the star, its red dulled but defiant, and swear I won't let them bury me here. Not without a fight I'm ready to unleash, my bones thrumming with it now. I'm 26 now, crouched at a splintered desk in my turret at the Vale of Thorns Manor, rain pounding the narrow window as I scrawl notes from Glintwire University's night classes, my candle's flame twitching over pages that reek of ink and sleepless grit. The manor's cold gnaws my joints, but I've carved this defiance, a degree my rope out of this mire. Last night's ember still coils in me, a wire pulled tight. My chair scrapes as I shift, and Torvin, 23, storms up, his bulk slamming me into the wall, his smirk a jagged shard, my notes spill, and Luneth, 20, drifts by in a shimmer of silk, her giggle a barbed hook with "Poor Zyra" tacked on, piercing my ears. Serafix, 49, strides in, her voice a shard of ice, "Zyra, a stain on us." And I spot Caelric, 51, behind her, his quill etching my trust fund, Mom's breath, into Torvin's startup. His eyes, shadowed and damp, meet mine, then fall as her grip bites his wrist. My lungs seize, a storm swelling in my ribs, and I scoop my papers, shoving Torvin when he looms, his ale-stink breath hissing, "Scrap dreams for a scrap girl?" My elbow jabs his chest, a surge of defiance cracking through me as he reels. I've been buried in books, blind to Kaelric's games, but their scorn is a whip I won't bend under anymore. Seraphix calls for Luneth's shawl, her tone clipped, but I'm fixed on Kaelric, his hand shaking as he signs again. Then her demand fractures the air. Torvin needs more, a plea she's hounded him with since they wed, and he stiffens, jaw clenched. Her eyes flash panic, a hawk losing its perch, and I see her, less tyrant, more scavenger clawing for control. My heart slams, not with yesterday's dull ache, but a razor-edged awakening. I've been a fool, trusting his murmurs of safety when I should have pried the truth loose months ago. Rain hammers the glass, a relentless pulse, and I taste the grit of my own resolve, my notes crumpling in my fist. This isn't their victory, it's my war, and I've been bleeding out by waiting. Torvin rights himself, his glare a chipped flint, but I stand firm, my stance a wall as Luneth's silk fades into the hall. I've been a wraith too long, drifting in their tide, but that's done. A surge rises in me, cold and cutting, ready to carve through their brittle rain. I turn to my desk, the candle's glow flaring, and swear I'll not be their echo. Not now, not when I feel my own weight pressing back against their grind, a storm I'm ready to unleash with every breath I take. I'm 27, stepping out of Glintwire University's night class as a bruised sky presses low, the air ripe with wet earth and a wind that gnaws my coat like a stray dog snapping for scraps. My satchel sags with books I've scraped coins for, each one a step out of the veil's grip. I couldn't sleep until I knew, last night's glimpse of Kaelric's quill, a splinter lodged deep. I marched to the manor's library, its shelves bowing under dust and gloom, and find him, 52, slumped at a table, lamplight catching his gray hair like frost on dead grass. I growl for the truth, my voice a rough edge slicing the musty hush, and he spills it, jagged and low. I've drained your trust fund, Zyra, for Torvin's reckless venture and Luneth's lavish lessons. They're my redemption. His eyes pooling as regret chokes him. Seraphix, 50, looms as heels echo faintly from the hall, her smirk a sickle glinting in the dim. She drifts in, fingers drumming his shoulder, and Torvin, 24, barges past, his shove a blunt strike. Waste of space. My satchel crashes down, but my glare pins him, his step faltering under my steel. My skull hums, a crimson fog rising, and Luneth, 21, flits behind, her laugh a brittle bell, but it's drowned by the thunder in my chest. I've been a fool, swallowing his dodges since I saw that paper a year ago. I don't crumble. I spin, boots hammering stone as I charge to Glintwire's core, the tavern's roar folding around me. I sling ale amid sweat and sour spills, coins clattering like teeth I'll sharpen into tools. Later, I slump in a widow's attic, rafters groaning under a dripping roof, my breath a rasp as I count loans and shifts. They've left me nothing, but that's a spur digging in, not a scar. The wind outside keens through the shingles, a feral hymn sinking with my blood, and I see Kaelric's not my harbor. He's a weight I've hauled too far. Seraphix's sway, Torvin's fists, Luneth's sneer, they're ropes I'll shred with my bare grip. My fingers scrape the attic's peeling beams, tracing a road I'll hack from their ruin. I've been a thread pulled taut, but no more. This treachery's a crucible, and I'm the iron glowing red within. I haul myself up, the chill prickling my flesh, and drag my satchel near, its heft a pledge. I'll rise from this hole, not on their dregs, but on the grit I've forged, a pillar they can't crack. The tavern's clatter drifts up, a beat I'll twist to my tune, and I taste the bitter edge of my own power, a draft I'll swallow whole until I tower over their collapse. Every thud of my heart hammers a promise. Every breath shapes a frame that's mine alone, unyielding and sharp, a weapon I'll wield through their ash. I'm 29, weaving through the veil of Thorn's manor for the harvest feast, his letter begging me this once, the hall steeped in firelight that flickers over damp stone, a veil of roasted meat and clove drifting upward like a heavy sigh to the arched rafters. My coat, patched from 2 years of Glintwire's grind, carries a degree built on credits I'd stashed and rejections I've turned to flint. I'm here, tugged by a thread of blood I can't yet sever. Kaelric, 54, shuffles near, his hello a fractured whisper lost in the hum, his frame bent like a sapling under ice. Seraphix, 52, sweeps in, her smirk a taut thread over lips drawn thin, her velvet cloak grazing the floor with a hiss that scrapes my nerves. Torvin, 26, lounges at the table, his boasts of a crumbling venture, a hollow drone, his glare snagging me with a sneered, "Still here?" that digs like a burr. Luneth, 23, clings to Seraphix, her fingers worrying a goblet, her fragility a porcelain shell poised to crack. A gray-haired woman, her scowl familiar, keen-eyed, narrows her gaze at Seraphix's dismissive flick, a ripple I pocket for later. Kaelric slips Mom's locket into my palm, its chain a cold whisper I let fall through my fingers like dust. His ghosts can't tether me now. The fire snaps, embers grazing my wrist with a sharp kiss, and I feel their stares, a web I've danced through before. I've forged a life beyond their grasp, yet this hall pulls me back, a tide I tread with wary steps. Then, Drenvar, 31, my shadow from riverbank days, sidles up, his voice a rough undertone cutting the clatter. "Torvin's tracked you, Zyra, seething at your rise." His hazel eyes dart with unease, and I feel it. I'm a thorn in their side, a snag they can't unweave. My chest locks, not with doubt, but a honed edge slicing through. I've outstripped this trap, their brittle rule a shell I've cracked. Torvin's sneer jars, a rusty gear grinding my calm, and I pivot, my boots scraping stone as I thread through the throng, the veil's gale keening beyond the walls. A summons I meet with steady strides. I've been a stalk swaying too long, but now I'm a beam tempered in Glintwire's fire, unbroken by their pull. Seraphix's cloak, Luneth's goblet, Kaelric's locket, they're echoes of a current I've forded. My breath fogs in the night's bite as I break free, the manor's glow shrinking behind, and I sense my roots, not theirs, taking hold, a weave I've spun from my own wounds, firm and mine. The gale whips my hair, a wild chant to my pace, and I savor the crisp tang of my own will, a liquor I've brewed from their disdain. I'm no longer their murmur, but a call forging its own rhythm, a note they'll never mute. I'm 31, stepping into the stone amphitheater in the Vale for Kaelric's 57th, his final call drawing me to snap their hold, the air thick with salt and frost, a wind keening through fissures like a bowstring stretched tight against the cliffs. My patched coat, stitched from years teaching scraps in Glintwire, flaps loose, a flag of my hard-won ground. I'm here to end it, my boots gnashing gravel in a rhythm I've claimed. The crowds murmur a low growl as voices stir beneath torchlight that streaks the craggy walls. Kaelric, 57, slumps at the center, his gray hair a tattered shroud, his frame crumpled like a sparrow snared in a gale. Seraphix, 54, towers beside him, her velvet a dark tide, until she thrusts a tag into my chest. The disappointment in her spiked scrawl, and her cackle tears the night, a shrill gust that claws my ears. My pulse slams, then surges, a molten flood breaching its walls, and Torvin, 28, lurches forward, his sneer a jagged spur as he snarls, "Crawl back where you belong!" The crowd's eyes pin him, his fists twitching but checked by their weight. Luneth, 25, drifts near, her titter a brittle thread, her fingers skittering over silk like moths on a frayed web. The gray-haired hag from the feast, her gaze a flint strike, bellows, "Shame on you!" At Seraphix, her voice a lash slicing the hum, while a slouched drunk staggers up, his weak, a ragged howl at me, spit flecking the air. Every wound ignites. Caelrix silences, their theft, this branding. A furnace roaring in my ribs. Drenvar, 34, slips close, his whisper a rough burr. "She schemed this, Zyra, and he let her." His nod to Caelric a stone I kick aside. His cowardice isn't my yoke. I stand firm, the wind tugging my hair like a battle hymn, and Seraphix's cackle falters as the hag's stare drills into her. She recoils, a shadow buckling under a torch's glare, her rein a brittle stalk snapping in my sight. My hands quake, not with dread, but a tempest bursting its seams. I've clawed a life they can't graze, and this tag, this barbed noose, is their dying clutch at my core. Torvin's glare sharpens, Luneth's titter fades, but I'm untouchable. My voice a coal I've stoked too long now flaring wild. The drunks howl, the hags lash, their gusts in a storm I've become. I feel the stone beneath me, cold and resolute, a ridge I've scaled to dwarf their scorn. Caelric's slump, Seraphix's flinch, their husks I've outlasted, their game a snare I'll shred. My breath steams, edged with frost, and I taste the salt of my own steel, a draught too fierce for their shallow wells. I've been their whisper, their shade, but no more. This is my earth, my gust, my blaze. The crowd's pulse spikes, a beat I ignore, and I lock onto Seraphix's crumbling mask, her fingers jerking as if to snatch back power. I'm the swell she can't stem, the rift she can't seal, a force they've misread. I turn, gravel rasping under my stride, the wind a roar at my heels, and I know this isn't retreat. It's the crest I've sharpened, a blade I'll swing to hew my own dawn, unbowed and mine. I'm 31, standing firm in the stone amphitheater in the Vale, the air thick with brine and smoke, a wind threading through the cliffs like a serpent sloughing its skin against the night's coarse grain. My patched coat, forged in Glintwire's crucible, billows as I pluck a chalice from a stand, its metal cold and biting in my fist. My boots rooted on gravel that thrums with the crowd's restless pulse. I've come to cut them loose, and this is my reckoning. Caelric, 57, slumps at the rim, his face a creased scroll of remorse, his gray eyes skittering as if to dodge my silhouette. Seraphix, 54, towers near, her velvet a dark spill, her lips curling until my voice splits the clamor. To kin I bled for, this is my severance. And I tip the chalice, wine spilling across the stone like blood from a slit throat. The crimson gleams in the firepot's haze, a mirror of their theft and my lost years. Caelric shrinks, his hands digging into his thighs. Seraphix chokes, her gasp a ragged hiccup, and Torvin, 28, lunges, his bellow, "You're dead!" A fractured snarl, but the gray-haired hag charges, her elbow ramming his ribs as she crows, "Burn 'em down, lass!" He stumbles, his glare lingering like a coal, fists knotted, while a burly merchant thunders, "Out with the lot!" And a wiry smith growls, "Enough!" Their voices a storm front crashing over the ridge. My chest ignites, a furnace blazing unchecked, and Luneth, 25, falters, her silk a drooping flag, her breath caught as the tide turns. I've struck a vein they can't staunch, my words a bellows stoking their collapse. The hag's chant soars, a feral hymn, the merchant's call booms, and the smith's growl joins the swell, the crowd surging like a river breaching its levee. I stride forth, gravel crunching a cadence beneath me, Caelric's wail a frail thread snapping in the wind's weave as I pass. Drenvar, 34, snags my sleeve, his grip a fleeting tether, his rasp low. "He's wept since you left their hold, Zyra." His gaze flicking to Caelric's wilt. I pull free, his plea a chord I've long outrun. his tears a flood too late to sway my blaze. The wind whips my hair, a tapestry stitched from my wounds, and I taste the brine of my unshackled will, a liquor honed to slice. Seraphix's choke, Torvin's coal-hot glare, their ashes swirling in my draught, their rule a brittle frame I've raised. My pace surges, the stones echo a war drum under my heels, and I see it. They've gripped me as a yoke, but I'm the forge they've tempered too long. Now I'm the hammer, smashing their cast. The crowd's roar peaks, a deluge I've unleashed, and I feel my roots tear loose, not theirs but mine, a framework hewn from my own grit, vast and unbowed. The cliffs rise, their shadows a veil I've shed, Caelric's wail, Luneth's stillness, their specters I've exorcised, their scheme a pyre I've toppled. My breath plumes, sharp with smoke, and I relish the tang of my victory, a brew too bold for their frail grasp. I've been their prey, their mark, but no more. This is my ocean, my furnace, my vault. I step past the amphitheater's lip, the wind a chorus at my flank, and I know this isn't a close. It's my dawn, a skyline I've forged with every gouge, unbound and wholly mine. I'm 32, settled in my glintwire turret, the spire's glass snaring dawn's first light like a prism casting amber across my desk, the city below purring a low hymn of iron and steam as students' voices drift up through the panes. My hands, calloused from years of teaching, lectures that grew from scraps I taught, and mending, cradle a career I've hewn from the debris, classes shaped, comrades won, mom's letters pinned to the wall like stars charting my climb. I've raised this peak, not on their dregs, but on a foundation of loans and toil, a citadel forged from their disdain. Caelric's calls, faint murmurs from 57, crackle unanswered through the line, their static a hum I let die. Torvin, 29, festers in his spite. Seraphix, 55, frays at her seams. Luneth, 26, mirrors their rot, shells I've left to crumble in my wake. Drenvar, 35, sends a note, his script terse. Caelric's sickly now, fading fast. He saw him last week. And I slide it aside, a leaf skittering off my ledge. His fall's a weight I won't carry, not after I've soared beyond its pull. The city's rhythm thrums beneath my floorboards, a pulse I've bent to my own song, and I trace the desk's worn grain, its ridges a tale of every knot I've unraveled. I've been their prey, their slight, but now I'm the builder, my life a stronghold they can't pierce. My breath mists the glass, a fleeting veil I brush away, and I feel my roots, not theirs, anchoring this earth, a weave crafted from my own strands, steadfast and boundless. I draw my ledger near, its leather scarred from wear, and inscribe the triumph, in ink that settles deep and bold, their old mark a ember I've flared into a coronet. Caelric's whispers, Torvin's venom, their murmurs lost in the clank of my world, a symphony I've scored alone. The dawn's glow swells, a current bathing my hands, and I taste the keen edge of my will, a vintage pressed from their neglect. I'm not their verdict. I'm my own, a monument sculpted from every gash, standing free and tall. My eyes rise to the skyline, spires slicing through the mist, and I know this isn't their story. It's mine, a crest I've scaled with every wound, a seat I've claimed with no nod, no shadow, just me. I've led you through my storm, from the Vale's grip to Glintwire's crest, and here's what I've hewn. Blood doesn't bind you. Your will does. They tried to pin the disappointment on me, but I spun their judgment into my throne, showing you can rise when you seize your own tail. It's not their words that define you. It's the iron you temper from their weight. So, have you ever turned a label like they branded me into your strength? I want your stories, your battles, your wins. Share them below. Let's trade grit and gleam. This isn't farewell. It's a breath. I'll return with more, my voice still cutting, my path still mine. Until we cross paths in another tale on the next crest, keep your own edge keen, unbowed, unbroken, all yours.